Welcome to the Feudal Anime Podcast. I'm Jack, and joining me is Rick. How you doing today, Rick?
You know, feeling pretty good. I think today's the day we're gonna finally put a cap on this little three-parter of a series review. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one would hope. We are definitely doing a deep dive in this one, simply because there's just so much that goes on. It's really hard to summarize it easily, but I feel like we'll be able to do it today.
I agree. So, do you remember where we left off on?
I do. Last week we left off with Simon being prosecuted for what had happened. So he had destroyed one of the alien species in general, and it destroyed a bunch of businesses, and people were wanting to cast blame. And so what ended up happening is Rossio decided to give the people what they wanted, which was Simon.
To use him as a scapegoat, even though he was the only one that actually did anything. And the damage would have been a whole lot worse had he not been there.
Right, but the people don't care about that, as they rarely do.
Short-sighted people do short-sighted things.
Indeed. Well, that, and when things go haywire, you have a crowd justice hive mentality behind it all. Now, we did forget about one thing.
Really?
We forgot that Nia appeared before Simon before he was finally prosecuted and discussed all the plans, which has helped amplify everyone's want for him to be prosecuted, because he was the one that basically brought everyone out of the ground, him and Kamina.
Wait, let's take a look at this for a second, because it wasn't Simone that brought everyone to the surface. It was Rossio. Simone gave everybody the opportunity. Rossio was the one that forced them to.
Yeah, but to them, because he's the leader of the government, he was the one that did it. And he enabled everyone to come to the surface. He enabled everyone to expand beyond their means. And in fact, Nia even talks about this, right? One of the ways they were able to keep everything suppressed was by them being underground. The spiral energy, even the Spiral King references this when he's talking to them through being cloned and ahead. But I
want to interject real quick. What is your opinion in the aspect of Rossio in comparison to the King, the Spiral King? Do you think they're acting similarly for the same purpose, or do you think they're different, working towards the same purpose, or do you think they're similar, working to different purposes?
I would have to say that Rossio and the King are the same. It's just they have different ideas and objectives in how they want to try and go about things. See, the King, and if you haven't seen the movie, this is where it like really differs, or one of the ways that it differs. So like the King, you find out in the movie, they go into a little bit more detail about the King. He was actually the leader of the anti-spiral forces, and he surrendered. And part of the bargaining was the humans can still live. They just have to stay underground where their spiral power, their evolutionary power, is tamed by them breaking out. And this is echoed again in the movies by them finally reaching the surface, especially Simon. Their spiral power, their evolutionary power just skyrockets. That's why they went from having nothing underground to full-fledged, fully technologic cities, able to read and write and everything else. And this is what the anti-spiral forces are scared of, because it'll get to a point to where they're not able to contain that power anymore. They'll become a destructive force against themselves. And so in a way, they were trying to prevent the destruction of the galaxy.
So I do have a question, because what you just said sounds a lot like the King was part of the anti-spirals.
No.
Okay, so he was the leader of the spirals.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, because it sounded a lot like you said he was the leader of the anti-spirals, and then he surrendered, and then he was ruling over Earth, or a spiral-type planet in the stead of an actual king. So
correct.
He was a spiral.
He was a spiral. He was the leader of the spirals. He was losing, and so he surrendered. And part of the bargaining chip was for him to maintain leadership over Earthlings, over Earth. And so he kept everyone subjugated underground so that way their spiral forces weren't, or their spiral power, I should say, wasn't allowed to flourish. Another difference that I might add, and I find the movies did this better instead of like the million apes walking the surface type thing, is in the anime when they send the movie, they send the rocket to the moon, and that's what triggers the anti-spiral forces. Instead, they said, you're finally reaching beyond the boundaries of your Earth. You are now you're now too dangerous. We now have to eliminate you.
Gotcha.
So rather than the million apes, they decided to say, because you were trying to reach the moon, which I find personally a little bit better and less confusing.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It's not the population, it's the potential that they were monitoring.
Yes.
That they were afraid of. Okay. Now, what I find uniquely surprising and kind of justified, Rossiu was throwing away all of the old gunmen. He was essentially trying to erase the past.
Yes.
Because as you know, history is written by the victors.
Yeah.
And he was trying to erase anything the Spiral King once did. Ironically enough, the only thing to combat the anti-spirals effectively was the old technology. And Rossiu's I know better strategy left them completely defenseless.
Yeah. It's because the gunmen were specifically designed for anti-spiral forces. And by him getting rid of almost all of them, in effect doomed them. In a manner of speaking, the only one that's still there is the Gurren Lagann. And
and even that one Rossiu was trying to get rid of.
Yeah. He found it to be a relic of ages past. But Simon obviously was able to keep it from being destroyed because, it's his. He's like, you can't get rid of mine. I'm the leader of the government. Go fuck yourself. Pardon the language.
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And it's just funny to me that a relic of the past turns out to be the key to the future.
Yeah. No kidding. So we have all that going on, and so Nia explains everything that's going on, and so everyone atop of everything being destroyed, and atop of Nia broadcasting to everyone basically, hey, you were brought to the surface, your powers now flourishing, and you guys jumped not centuries, but decades and decades ahead in terms of technology. You're now too dangerous, so we're gonna kill you all. And we're going to have the moon crash into the Earth. And so now everyone's pissed off and upset because Simon brought them to the surface, and he is basically the reason for their destruction because he made it so that way they weren't forced to stay underground anymore. So people are like, you're the one at fault. We need you to pay for this and appease them, hopefully, because you're the one they're pissed at. Never mind the fact that that's not going to do anything. And then also on top of that, Rossiu comes to them with a plan because this is where we actually finally hear a number, 36 underground settlements. And he says this to the people in the middle of the trial for Simon. He says, I have a plan. We have 36 underground settlements that will be able to house almost everyone in the world. The rest of them, and he gets this information from the Spiral King, the rest of them will be here in the city because there is a ship actually beneath us, and he shows them a picture of the ship. And
it is beautifully gargantuous.
It is. And he goes, everyone else will be able to come here. And so people are happy with Rossiu and mad at Simon. And so they sentence Simon to death, even though he's going to die. He's thrown in prison.
Well, the funny thing to me is, do you remember who set up the plan to go to the moon?
I believe it was a joint venture amongst all of them because the Spiral King, in the movie, they don't specify. In the movie, it was kind of like discussed that they would go to the moon to see what was there. In the anime, they want to go to the moon because
the Spiral King said that it would fall.
Yeah, that it would bring about their the messenger of death. Oh, sorry. No, I take that back. They say it in the movie too. They say in the movie that the moon will be your messenger of death. So that's why it was decided amongst them all that they all would go to the moon to figure out what was going on. Either way, the moon's going to crash into the earth, and Nia says this, the moon's going to crash into the earth and you're all going to die.
I understand that, but the thing I was trying to get at was in every situation in every scenario you've got, Rossiu was in the forefront. He was the one pushing it, and he's acting like a true leader. He's throwing everybody in front of the sword before it reaches himself.
Right. Which is how
cowardly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if you're the leader of the world, you can't be throwing yourself out there because you have to be there to provide the guidance behind it all. Like in a case of in a state of emergency, right? If the president were here or ever put in danger, he doesn't get a choice in throwing himself in front of danger. His feet wouldn't even touch the ground if he was being put into a car. Like he would be put there, and he needs to be kept safe because he is the leader. He is the one that is in charge of everything, and people will have to look to him for that guidance.
Very true. Very, very true. It just seems that Rossiu kind of put Simone in a situation only to sacrifice him and only to safeguard himself, which I find very uniquely interesting simply because before the time skip, Rossiu looked up to Simone in such a manner that was almost worship.
Kind of. But he felt like everything that he was doing wasn't for the best of humanity in and of itself. And they also kind of left it so that way he can grow on his own because he needed to. He still had those basic tendencies, those ideals from when he lived in his own underground world.
Yeah, he never really got past that,
No, he never did. That being said, let's move on and discuss their big plan to leave the Earth while having everyone else stay on the Earth. Now, Liron, I believe is his name, if I'm not mistaken, he comes up with a simulation showing what would happen when the moon crashes into the Earth. And he tells this to Rossiu, and Rossiu then understands that everyone on Earth, even in the underground bunkers that they're being sent to, will die. Everyone's going to die. Originally, they thought that it was only going to be a year before they had to come back to the Earth, before they could come back to the Earth. But now they're figuring out that they're never going to be able to come back to the Earth because everyone's going to be dead and it's going to be destroyed. And then Nia appears to Simone at this same time and tells him the exact same thing. The only difference is she says, even Rossiu, who is fleeing to the heavens because they have the moon's coming in, ready to crash. They have forces there just destroying everything at the same time, says to him, even they will not escape. Total despair is what we want. We want to destroy every last bit of hope.
See, I don't mean to interrupt, and you're on a real good train of thought, and it is almost flawless, except the thing that gets me is it's always Simone that gets the message, nobody else, which should just, hey, he's the key figure, don't go try to kill him off. But even there, that said, when they do the projections, Rossiu knows and sees that, oh crap, I'm going to kill off a lot of the population here. The only people that I'm able to save are the ones that are in my ship. So we got to get the ball rolling on this. Everyone start piling in. And it's kind of messed up because he doesn't even say anything to anybody else. Like the people who are going out to the other underground bunkers, he lets them think they're going to be safe still.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to give them false hope and saying, or he gave them false hope. He's like, hey, you're going to be saved. Now he finds out you're not going to be saved. You're going to die. And so what ends up happening is, Rossiu knows that if he says, hey, you're not going to be safe, I know I don't have enough room on the ship to save everyone else, so I'm going to try and save what I can with that mentality. I mean, like, that's a general mentality. I can't save everyone, so I'm going to save who I can, and then we're going to skedaddle. We're going to get the hell out of here. And so that's what ends up happening, too.
That appears to be a rather large theme and an extremely large difference between the leadership styles of Simone and Rossiu. Rossiu's a survivalist and minimalist to the extreme in this particular case. And Simone's like, I'm not having any of that. That this is complete and utter BS.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to choose between for the greater good versus trying to help everyone. It's not fair. And Rossiu is more realistic. He says leaders have to make that really tough decision. And a good leader makes that choice, and then it weighs heavily on him for a while.
Yeah.
It weighs heavily on them, but whatever.
Yeah, no, it weighs heavily on the conscience of the individual that had to pass that order, so to speak. Another thing is that when they finally escape and then go out there, they are ambushed, like Nia was telling Simone. And at that point, Yoko finally comes back into the mix, too, at the same time, and busts Simone out of jail. And everyone else is, ready to bust him out of jail, too, at that same time. You also find out, too, that their gunmen aren't destroyed. Yeah,
that is a huge, hey, Rossiu's an idiot, and we all think he's an idiot. So when he told us to destroy them, I saved the mechanics. Was like, I saved them for a rainy day because I figured we might need them, and that was kind of awesome.
Yeah, which is great that they did.
One thing we did gloss over is Simone was actually thrown into prison. Like, legitimately, that was a episode, and he saw that. Shish kebab. What's the kid's name? Starts with a V. Viral. Viral the virus. He will never die. He'll never go away.
Exactly.
The Beastman, Viral, is in there too. And he's like, hey, you're my cellmate. What the hell? I've always wanted to kill you. I've always wanted to get back at you for my humiliation. And he's like, well, it's not really a humiliation, unfortunately. And they end up making peace, a strenuous peace, but peace nonetheless. And whereas Rossiu used to be the partner in Simone's Gurren Lagann, Viral becomes his partner. And it's kind of cool. It shows you just how much spiral energy Simone has, because Beastmen are unable to generate their own spiral energy because they don't have the double helix, which is why there was able to be so many of them. And he's basically able to pilot Gurren Lagann by himself, just power it up by himself.
Right.
And Viral is just there to help, essentially, to be the supporting factor.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. It's just kind of cool the way they set everything up and the way that they have attempted to figure stuff out, attempted to explain things. Like after they bust him out, they need to save someone desperately. And the feeling that Simone gives off, the desperation he gives off, he's able to leap through dimensions, time shift, if you will, when he's trying to save Rossiu.
Oh, he doesn't do that when he busts out of jail.
No?
No, that takes place after the fact.
After he busts out of jail, right?
No, after the battle that goes on in the heavens. So in space. So what happens is everyone piles on to this rocket, shoot up into space, and they fight to save Rossiu and everyone on that ship because they're about to get destroyed.
That's right. I was skipping. I'm sorry.
And
apparently
so
I
also,
just get in the future here.
Yeah, no. Also, what ends up happening is you find out the moon ain't really the moon. It's another gunman. It's another giant robot just up there, and it starts shooting lasers at them as well. And so they fight,
That's
and
right.
then at that same time, because of everything that's going on, Simone ends up combining with the ship that all the people are on and turning that one into a giant mech. All right, he is now a giant fighting robot on that flying ship. And so he's able to save everyone. And then he goes into the moon, and then he, Star Wars-esque type feel, goes into the center to destroy the moon or stop it, so to speak. Instead of destroying it and blowing it up, it becomes what it used to be. But when he stops there, he's about to slam it in. Nia, who's anti-spiral, she's an artificial life form, appears there, and what ends up happening is this discussion. He's not convinced that she's fully anti-spiral. He's not convinced that she is completely lost to him, and he points this out by pointing at the ring he gave her because he had proposed to her. He's like, if that were true, if you are really not the Nia I knew, then why do you still have that ring?
Why do you still have the ring that I gave you? Yep.
And so what ends up happening is she ends up having some internal conflict. He puts the core in there, and he's able to stop the moon from crashing. And
just barely.
Just barely, but he does do it. And then what ends up happening is the moon turns into a giant ship, and that's
he's
when
able to combine with.
Yeah, that he will eventually combine with. But at that point, that's when they go back to Earth. They say, we're going to go to this area. You find out that they're able to do transdimensional, multi-dimensional anchoring, and they pull the moon out of another dimension into their dimension where it's supposed to be, and it starts getting really ridiculous because then they start delving into like quantum physics a little bit there too. So they went from underground, barely able to read, to here's quantum physics, quantum theory, and everything else. It's like in the span of 7 years. That is quite the leap.
The quantum leap, if you will.
Also, at the same time when they're on Earth pulling the moon out and everything like that, that's when Rossio goes back to his home area. He is about to kill himself, and that's when he teleports into that area and stops him. But he is not with Viral, but he's with one of the siblings, the sister that was with him the whole time. And that's when she smacks him. And so he goes, I need you to take care of things here while we go off and fight. And so he goes off and they go off and fight. And so the only reason why they're able to get there is because Simone gave her the ring. So where they're at is at a ring because one of the arguments is reality is not real until you look at it. Well, no one's been able to get to where the anti-spirals are because no one's ever seen it, so they can't teleport there. But Simone gave her a ring, and so he's able to see it, so he's able to teleport there because he has seen that ring. He knows it exists, so they're able to track it.
Okay. So because I think what you're saying, I understand where you're coming from. I've seen the anime. What it sounded like you just said was because Rossio had the ring, Simone was able to see it. But what you really mean is
Nia, because Nia had the ring, Simone was able to see it.
The ring.
Right, and they're able to locate the ring. So that's how they're able to get to the anti-spiral forces homeworld. But even then, they don't really get to the anti-spiral forces homeworld when they do their teleportation.
Yeah, they go to a holographic projection of Mia slowly being disintegrated by the anti-spirals.
Which is an area in between dimensions.
In between.
In between two dimensions. Which, why not? Let's have a fight. Let's have a multi-dimensional fight in between dimensions.
Well, the crazy thing to me, and I realize this doesn't mean much because I don't really have too much solid information to go on, but they create a gunman that is quite easily one of the largest ever even thought of in anime, and eventually becomes a gunman inside of a gunman inside of a gunman inside of a gunman.
Yes.
Operating another gunman.
Yes. Yes. That's, again, this is why I said at the beginning, I had said this sets groundwork for basically anything goes. So at this point, with everything that's going on, we went from Simone being in jail, or rather Simone being prosecuted, to Simone being in jail, to a space fight, to a moon being a gunman, a moon being turned back into a ship, to Simone about to, or not Simone about to, but Simone saving Rossio because he's about to kill himself. And then we jump ahead, and that's all in the span of one episode. Two episodes. Yeah, right. And so we go from that, we go to the moon being pulled out of another dimension at the same time that Simone is saving Rossio. And then at the end of that episode, everyone's leaving that dimension to go into another dimension to save Nia and to fight the anti-spiral forces.
Now, here's a little bit of a thought, experiment, let's call it. Do you think they pulled the moon from a different dimension now that other dimensions Earth is going to go suffer catastrophe because it lost its moon?
No, it was placed in between dimensions, so it was just hanging out in space.
Gotcha. Okay, no, I'll accept that.
I think that's actually what they said, that it was stuck in between dimensions and they pulled it back into the fabric of reality.
Those damn anti-spirals and their technology.
Those sons of guns.
With their quantum physics and
quantum entanglement and everything else, and
yeah.
Those bastards.
How dare they use lingo I don't understand.
And math I don't understand. Jeez Louise.
Right?
That being said, we're now at an in-between dimension, multi-dimensional fight that the anti-spirals have control over. And so we have gunmans inside gunmans fighting these arms, faces, and feet, because that's the anti-spiral force's choice of ship, apparently.
Well, apparently they just want to get a grip on the situation. Sorry.
Score 1 for dad jokes. All right.
Oh, man.
So but they also find out that they were there in a trap, and so they have this machine that turns spiral energy into basically a water-like matter substance that traps all of everyone, because apparently everything was going easy and they couldn't figure out why, and then they figured out it was a giant trap, and so everyone's trapped in this trap.
They were looking at it and they're like, this is way too simple. Why is everyone so weak in comparison to what we used to know? How did we lose? How did the people who were far more advanced than us lose to such a weak army? And then once they're like, all right, so let's just regroup. That's when that's when the hands and feet start to stomp them out, essentially.
Right. And
it's in the anime, it gets real sad, real fast, because the kids that were originally with Rossiu, that were ejected from the clan, if you will, the hole they were in when Rossiu left, they become not necessarily the key figures of the show, but they're definitely important to everybody. Well, they're about to die. They've been trapped, if you will, and gravely injured as far as their machines go, and they can't quite make it back.
Right. And a bunch of the other characters that have been there for quite a while start dying. To save those two.
Sacrificing themselves. Yeah.
Yep. They start dying to save them, and they realize that those two are the future. Their time's coming to an end anyways. They've been around for a long time. They've already pushed society as a whole along, and now we have to make sure that the newer generation is still there. We have to make sure that those two are still around for the future.
They who represent the future, you know?
Yeah.
It's sad, and it's kind of a heroic end. You see what's going on, and it makes you sad that it's happening, but it also makes you happy that they were given the respect of this kind of send-off, you know?
Yeah. When everyone gets trapped, when they're trying to regroup, everyone gets trapped and pulled in. They're in this water-like substance, and they're not able to do anything, and it sucks up the spiral energy, creating a concentrated force, basically heavier gravity around them, so to speak, pressure, keeping them from being able to move forward, keeping them from being able to...
It essentially creates a gravity well.
Yeah, a gravity well.
The stronger you fight against it, the more energy you're feeding the gravity well, and the stronger it becomes.
Exactly. That is perfect. That is on point.
Kind of like a Chinese finger trap. The harder you pull away, the tighter the grip becomes.
Yeah. So they get an idea to try and destroy the gravity wells, because they figure out where it is, the anti-spiral machine. And so Kitan, like Kamina, kisses Yoko, which apparently if you kiss Yoko, you're dead.
She's got the kiss of death. I mean...
Yeah. So, I mean, let's put
it.
this on, let's put this in perspective. If you force your kiss on her, it's the kiss of death. For you.
Fair. If you're the one initiating it, then she's like, I'm not having that.
Yeah.
I'm a man eater.
Yeah. So he goes out to try and destroy it, and when he gets there, the mech, or the gunman that he's in gets destroyed, and they're distraught.
That's not quite true. That's not quite true.
The gunman that his gunman was controlling
exactly
was destroyed, but everyone doesn't know that the smaller gunman survived.
Yeah, they don't know that he was ejected.
Right.
And he takes, ironically enough, Gurren Lagann's broken drill, and using spiral power, he repairs it. It is, in my opinion, the first and only time he actually ever tapped into the spiral force like Simone does.
Exactly.
And he was able to use the Giga Drill
breaker
move.
Yeah, except he calls it the King Catan Giga Drill Breaker. You know, he's got to turn it into his own thing. He can't have someone else rock it. You know, it's got to be his own. But he, at that point, you see the spiral in his eyes, and he goes, so that's what that's like. Now I understand. Now I get it. He dies, but everyone is saved. And so you have a whole slew of everyone that dies. Like a whole bunch of the original cast that dies. Now, what's interesting is in the movie, the only person that dies other than Kamina is Kitan. So everyone else still lives.
Oh.
Just food for thought. At that point, everyone is continuing to push forward. And so the anti-spiral forces basically put everyone into a trance, into their own little world, where they'll never be able to escape. They'll never be able to get out of that. But that's never true, and that's, you know, where there's a will, there's a way, and someone's going to eventually bust out of there, because why not?
Yeah, and as you could probably surmise, only one person breaks out, and that one person just so happens, you know, to be Simone. And it's kind of cool because go ahead.
Also, while everyone's in there, before he breaks out, we see Buta. And Buta, through spiral energy, because of him being around Simone for so long,
he was acting like a sponge and has been absorbing all the excess spiral energy.
And then evolves himself into a humanoid form.
Yeah, it was. You watched the movie. I think it explains it a whole lot better there. I saw the anime, so it was very confusing. I thought that he forced himself to evolve, not because he absorbed all the stuff from Simone, but because he came in contact with the Spiral King.
No.
That's what I originally thought, because when he was on the ship, that's when he started like glowing and glistening.
No, the anti-spirals actually state, and the Spiral King even points out that he has been acting like a sponge, absorbing all this energy. It wasn't that he came in contact with the Spiral King, it's that he's just been a sponge absorbing all this energy, and he chose to evolve himself into a humanoid form, and even the anti-spiral states that because of this, you're now going to be stuck in this loop too.
Yeah, I guess. That's my defeated voice, because I got nothing to combat that.
That being said, back to what you were originally saying, the Simone is the first one to break out of this alternate reality loop where they're stuck in an alternate reality. He realizes something's not right because he then has two Kaminas there. One of them is apologizing profusely for something that was done, and it's like it doesn't feel right to him. He's like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't jive with me. And then the other Kamina, the real one, appears behind him.
The spirit of Kamina is the one that helps him. I don't think he did it by himself.
Yeah.
The spirit of Kamina came out and was like, hey, you're better than this.
Yeah. And he does the same thing. The spirit of Kamina appears for Yoko at the same time too.
And Simone becomes a kind of beacon to everyone. Mm-hmm. And he flies through each and every reality. I don't think he did so intentionally. It just happened that way. But he flies through each and every reality. And it's kind of cool because everyone who sees it goes, yeah, this is nice.
They
but I belong there.
Yeah, no, they immediately see the beacon and they move into the reality of reality. And also, while this is going on, the anti-spiral is talking to the Nia, telling Nia, why are you resisting? It must be because of his spiral energy that you were affected So now I'm just going to have to force everything. And then he appears and saves Nia. Everyone else appears at the same time, ready to fight the anti-spiral. And that's what they do. They all end up conforming into a giant mecha. Now they all now have they all now have spiral power. And so they all form into a giant mecha, a universe, a galaxy-sized mecha to fight. And so what the anti-spiral does is he matches them in size and power because he wants to defeat them and create ultimate despair. And so what ends up happening is they have this massive mega fight that ends up being broadcasted back to their original world, and they're sitting there fighting, throwing galaxies at each other as weapons.
Now, the thing that makes me kind of laugh a little bit is if you take real-time physics and you take real-time, like our own world rules, if they're throwing galaxies, do you realize how large they are?
Yes.
And do you realize how slow, in retrospect to their size, they're actually moving?
Yes.
Because
do you realize that you can't throw them like a frisbee like they are too? I mean...
Oh, absolutely. But what I mean is, if you look at it, they are, a couple billion light years tall and a couple billion light years wide. When you throw a punch, you're only traveling at the speed you can, which is, let's assume the speed of light.
We're not going to get into the physics or mentality behind this. This is...
No, just follow my thought, because it's kind of cool. I promise I won't take too much time on it. But let's assume that they're actually fighting like that. When they move, it could legitimately be happening now, but every swing they do takes millions of years. So the fight back home is happening like relatively quick, but not in retrospect, but in the view of somebody else looking at them, it's taking lifetimes, millennia for them to land a single punch.
Yeah, but we all know that's not what's happening, because that wouldn't make for a great anime. Everyone's seeing just two figures up in the sky for a millennia, and then they figure out, oh, look, they're about to collide. Millions of years later, you can't have that. You got to roll with it, man. You got to roll. Like I said, anything goes. Anything goes in this anime. They never break the rule. You want to throw galaxies like a frisbee? Knock your socks off. Never mind the fact that's not real, but you want to make this into a reality? Do it.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because technically, if you want to get technical with it, we could be one of those universes that they're throwing, and we would never know.
At that point, I really couldn't care. If that's what happens, we're dead anyway, so good on you.
I was going to say, congratulations, you are a glorified baseball, sir.
Yay! That being said, that they end up fighting and they end up winning. Needless to say, they win. Their power grows so big. Each one takes over at a certain point to fight and win, or push them towards victory. But you also see the anti-spirals were once spiral people, and they closed themselves off from the rest of the world, the universe in general.
They became afraid of their own power, their own potential.
Yeah, and
they took the law of thermodynamics a little too far.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is law of thermodynamics essentially is there's only so much heat. And once that goes away, you have cold nothingness, or the universe is always expanding. And soon it'll become so vast and so separate that it won't survive. So you're rushing towards your own destruction.
Yeah, they said that what'll end up happening is they'll turn into a black hole and destroy everything around them, and so they didn't want to do that at all. So that's why that's why they closed themselves off from the world.
Well, I was going to say, instead of them destroying everything, they're just going to destroy most of it
and subjugate everyone too.
Yeah, and subjugate everyone. So, but anyway, they finally fight one against the other, and it becomes basically who's got, as Kamini would say, more fighting spirit. And I'm sure you can guess and figure out who has more fighting spirit. I mean, it's a stretch, but you can guess.
Yeah, we all know that Kamina has some fighting spirit, but Simon has a lot more, obviously.
Yeah.
So basically the fight eventually ends. Right? They win, they overtake. I mean, like, it comes down to basically a punching match in between the anti-spiral and Simon through his spiral power, turns his own fist into a drill and destroys him.
Yep.
And so that's how they're able to win. And he ends saying, we're going to find a way to make sure this never happens. We will find a way to make sure everyone gets saved. And then you hear, when he finally dies, you hear the other dimensions, the other worlds cheer, which, okay, however, how they're able to hear everyone cheer is beyond me, but whatever. They hear them cheer because they finally defeated the anti-spiral forces that had been keeping them defeated or destroyed, or subjugated or kept destroying everyone, because it's not the first time that the anti-spirals have been attacked on their home turf. They've been attacked by others. They even reference this. Yeah.
That ocean of despair and just all that crap that they were drugged down into, that was essentially all the other power, all the other spiral people power that were defeated.
Yeah. And Simon was able to tap into that power and utilize it for himself.
Yeah,
they even referenced that. But
that was a good episode, a sad one.
It was. So the fight ends, and so you see Simon and Nia getting married, because Simon saves Nia. Obviously. And after they kiss, after they just get married, she disappears. And it was something that they already knew about. They already Simon and Nia already knew about it. Okay. Yeah, they already knew what was going to happen. No one else knew. Everyone else was shocked. Everyone else was bewildered by them, by what they were seeing.
A lot about it.
Yeah. And so what he does is he hands the core. After that happens, he goes, no, we knew this was going to happen. I'm not a leader. I'm just Simon the Digger. And I'm going to go. And that's what he does. He leaves. He gives the core to the two kids. He then tells Rossiu to, take good care of the world that they built and everything like that. And then he just disappears. And then they jump forward 20 years.
So many damn years for no reason.
Just to kind of give you an idea of where everyone's at. Right? The two kids, they're now older. They're in charge of everything. They're the ones that are piloting the Gurren Lagann. And you see Yoko back at the school, because she was at a school, and you find this out too a couple episodes ago, that she was a teacher in a school. And so she's back there. She's old. She decided she didn't want to get married because the guys that forced a kiss on her both died, and she can't cope with that for whatever reason. You also see Simon, being an older man, telling a kid how to drill into this thing. And when you look at him, you see one eye is spiraled, signifying the spiral power. But it also shows Rossiu where he's at as well as, and V-Raw's the commander of that giant ship, and they're taking off for the first ever multi-dimensional intergalactic peace treaty, blah, 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 some or whatever. Yay team, the world is saved, and at the same time, we have no idea what the hell went on. So,
yeah, it It was one of those anime where you're like, I'm glad they came to a solution, but I'm not quite sure what that solution might have been.
Right. And they didn't do it any justice in the movie either. Because it's 2 movies, and the second movie doesn't do it any justice either. Because the second movie takes place over the course of the adult's life, after the 7 years. And in the movie, they don't show everywhere where everyone else is at. They just show Simone digging somewhere where someone said they couldn't dig. And he dug through the bedrock to get water for them. And then it shows him in the same scene seeing the people take off and telling a kid how to drill into a coconut, apparently. So.
Yeah.
So. That's how it ends. Little lackluster ending. Yeah, to say the least. Definitely. It was good. It was great anime. It was fun.
I liked the journey. I did not like the destination, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Yes, and they touched on so much throughout this whole anime. It was redonkulous how much they touched on.
The thing that got me, and the thing that surprised me, was even though this was made, 15-ish years ago, the political climate that they were able to predict when a tyrannical leader comes into power, or when people get used to a certain lifestyle, let's say, and it becomes what can you do for me? How come you can't fix this for me? What's in it for me? The selfishness.
Right. All they had to do
was amazing.
Right. Well, it's not that they foretold what would happen. It's they looked at the historics of society and human nature as a whole. It didn't come out 15 years ago. It came out 10. So they had full-fledged, unfeathered internet access. They could have done whatever they wanted.
True.
The novels and everything like that, I think, came out in 2007, roughly around the same time. The anime, I think it was like produced in line with each other, almost like.
Unfortunately, I don't have too much knowledge on that aspect of it, but when I first saw it, I was like, "Wow, this is kind of cool." And in my head, I'm like, "No one would ever do that. There's no way, no way." But just the way they're able to shape humanity, I guess, is the way I'm saying it.
Right.
The way they were able to just take the worst parts of the human psyche. And just make you feel like everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
Make a bad situation even worse.
As what usually happens. That being said, just to kind of tie things up a little bit, I'm looking at some information here, and it looks like the anime came out before the manga. And then the manga, halfway through the anime run, came out. And it ran for 6 years.
Oh.
For the manga. And then they had a light novel come out towards the end of the anime. And they had 4 light volumes come out. And then they also had a game come out right after the anime finished. And then a year later, they decided to do the mangas, 2 more mangas, which is what the movies are based on.
I'm not too big typically on advertising and product placement and all that stuff, but when it comes to just the timing that they've got going on here, it's beautiful.
Oh yeah.
This is popular. Let's keep it going. This is popular. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, well, luckily they ended it in 2008, so there you go.
I just wish they had a better ending.
Yeah, the ending was so lackluster for me. I really wished it was better. Okay, so how would you rate this anime?
I would say, with the exception of the very last episode, I could F.A.P to it.
Yeah. I'm right there. Although I'm kind of like along the lines of I would borrow it to F.A.P to it, maybe, and then I would give it back after one single run through, and that's about it. It's something I couldn't watch it multiple times. I mean, like I'd borrow it, watch it, F.A.P to it, turn it back to you, and then that's it. I wouldn't watch it again.
So it's a returning F.A.P. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. Yes, and that's my personal opinion.
True. See, my opinion on it would probably be real close to owning it, because it's something that in 10 years' time I'm going to want to watch again. Not something I'm going to watch every day, but it definitely has a rewatch value because you learn something new every single time. You know.
All right, that's fair enough.
Well, I think that wraps up this little delve into the human psyche.
Yeah, say the least. I mean, this one was packed full of action, adventure, science, confusing the hell out of me because they want to talk about quantum physics and everything else at the same time, and then leave an ending that had much to be desired.
Yeah.
Next week is my choice, and we're gonna go with Your Lie in April. This one's a slice of life one, and it's pretty depressing. The ending is pretty sad, but I enjoyed it, especially with the musical aspect of it, because it delves with or deals with a musician that's in high school and everything that he's trying to do in life.
I've heard good things about it.
I personally enjoy it. It's a great one. It is a very depressing one, though. It is very sad. So be prepared to cry. Just to throw that out there, because I cried at the end. Man, the ending was touching. So.
Alrighty. Well, I guess I will see you next week then.
Indeed, we will catch you next week. Please feel free to leave us some feedback, or if you have a suggestion on an anime you'd like to hear us talk about, email us at feudalaanimepodcast@gmail.com, and catch you all next week.
Later.